I arrived in the coastal town of Dyer's Cove 3 months ago, though the days have blended into one long, gray whisper of fog and salt since then. The map said Maine, but it might as well be the edge of the world. The locals call the area Devil's Throat, a stretch of black cliffs and sharp inlets where the ocean doesn't roar. It breathes like something vast and sleeping beneath the waves. I came here to study the deep-sea sound anomalies that have baffled NOAA for the past year. Low, rhythmic pulses detected more than 6 miles down, with harmonic structures that suggested intention. Patterns that didn't belong to tectonic shifts or whales. Patterns that felt alive. I remember the first time I heard it. It wasn't through the hydrophones or the research station speakers. It was through the walls of my rented house, late at night, when the tide was high and the wind carried the smell of rotten brine. A sound so low and steady it felt like my bones were vibrating. At first, I thought it was a trick of exhaustion, the result of too many sleepless nights decoding sonar graphs and field data. But the sound came again the next night, and the next, always around 2:37 a.m., as if following some hidden lunar rhythm. The people in town don't talk about the ocean. They fish, they dock, they drink, but when the sun sets, the piers are empty and the doors are locked. The woman who rented me this house, Mrs. Cohen, warned me not to walk near the cliffs after dark. "The fog doesn't move right at night," she said, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "And if you hear singing, don't answer." I laughed politely, thinking it was one of those local ghost stories to scare outsiders. But her face never changed. The house itself sits on the northern bluff, a crooked thing of salt-warped boards and ancient shingles, looking out over the black expanse of water. Inside, everything smells faintly of seaweed and mildew. My workspace is a mess of notebooks, waveform printouts, and audio equipment tethered by cables that snake across the floor like living veins. I spend hours listening through the static, trying to isolate the pulse buried beneath the noise. Last week, I captured it clearly for the first time. 3 sequences, separated by roughly 22 minutes each. The frequencies are lower than the human ear should detect, but when sped up, they form a series of tones that rise and fall like a chant. When I ran the sound through a spectral analyzer, I saw something impossible, harmonics repeating in perfect symmetry. No natural source could produce that kind of order. It was almost like language. That night, I dreamed of the ocean floor. Not an expanse of sand or coral, but a city. A vast structure of spiraling towers and bridges of stone, all glowing faintly with bioluminescent algae. It felt ancient, older than time, older than man. And in the center of it all was a figure standing beneath the waves, its eyes open and watching me through the dark. When I woke, the sound was still in my ears. I've started keeping a log, not just of the recordings, but of the way the sound seems to affect me. The first thing I noticed was how time seems to distort around it. Hours pass like minutes when I listen. My hands tremble when I write, not from fear, but from a strange, thrilling anticipation. There's something in that signal calling out to me. I can feel it under my skin, in the pulse of my veins. The fishermen watch me when I walk through town. They stop talking when I pass. I've seen them whispering, their weathered faces turned toward the sea as if expecting something to rise from it. Once, at the local diner, a man approached me, a heavy-set fellow with gray eyes and the smell of salt in his clothes. He asked, "You one of those government folk listening to the hum?" I said yes, that I was studying marine acoustic phenomena. He just shook his head. "That ain't no phenomenon," he said. "That's them singing. Been doing it longer than we've been breathing." That word, them, stuck with me. 2 nights ago, the signal changed. The pulse I'd been tracking became clearer, almost musical. I set my recorder to loop, fell asleep at my desk, and woke to find the window open. The air was cold, wet. The recorder light was blinking, and on the playback, I heard something that wasn't there before. It wasn't just tones now, it was words. Not English, but a sequence of syllables that rose and fell with eerie precision, like a hymn from another world. I couldn't stop listening. My skin prickled. Somewhere deep in my chest, something responded. Since then, I've started to feel the sea even when I'm far from it. The taste of salt on my tongue, the faint pressure in my ears, the rhythm of my heartbeat syncing with the distant pulse. Sometimes I catch myself humming along to the pattern, not realizing when I started. Yesterday, I walked down to the cliffs despite the storm warnings. The fog was so thick it seemed to breathe. I could hear the waves below, but there was something else, something slower, deeper, echoing beneath the crash of the surf. I thought I saw movement in the mist, a silhouette by the edge, tall and still, facing the ocean. When I blinked, it was gone. The tide has been higher lately. The locals say the moon is too close this month, but I think it's something else. The signal grows stronger with every passing night. I've begun to map its intensity against lunar phases, and the correlation is perfect. It peaks on nights like tonight, when the moon hangs low and red over the water, and the wind carries that impossible song. I keep telling myself this is research, that I'm here for data, for evidence. But deep down, I know that's not true anymore. I came here because something in that sound recognized me. When I stand by the window and look out across the Black Sea, I can feel it waiting beneath the surface, ancient, patient, alive. And sometimes, when the fog rolls in and the town lights vanish behind it, I swear I see faint shapes moving beneath the waves, gliding just below the surface, as if something vast is turning in its sleep. I've stopped fearing it. I think I've started to understand. I stopped sleeping properly after that night. The sound followed me even when I wasn't near the equipment, like a ghost frequency buried deep inside my mind. I could feel it at the edges of silence, a slow, rhythmic pulse echoing under every breath I took. I tried to convince myself it was nothing more than a form of auditory conditioning, my brain trained to recognize patterns. But part of me knew that wasn't it. The sound wasn't just repeating, it was changing. 3 nights later, I played back the latest recording through my noise filter. The low frequencies were the same, but underneath them, something new had appeared, a faint melodic structure. Notes, real ones, arranged in a sequence too deliberate to be random. I adjusted the spectrogram display and nearly dropped my coffee. The frequencies formed repeating arcs that curved back on themselves like spirals. Not random waveforms, but a pattern, a symbol. I printed it out, pinned it to my wall, and stared at it until the dawn light turned the ocean silver. The longer I looked, the more the lines seemed to shift and shimmer, as though the paper itself was breathing. The next morning, I found something strange. On the inside of my wrist, faint marks, thin, curved impressions on my skin that mirrored the same spiral pattern from the waveform. They weren't cuts or bruises. They looked almost like impressions, as if something had pressed the design into my flesh while I slept. I should have been terrified, but I wasn't. I felt calm, almost euphoric. The sound had touched me, marked me. That evening, the fog rolled in thicker than I'd ever seen. The wind died completely, and the sea looked like glass. I took my field recorder and walked down to the cliffside path, the one Mrs. Cohen told me to avoid. My boots sank slightly into the damp soil as I approached the edge. Below, the waves lapped lazily against the rocks, dark and viscous like oil. I pressed record. For the first few minutes, all I heard was wind and distant water. But then beneath it a tone, low, rising. It swelled like a living thing, resonating through my chest until I could feel my heartbeat syncing with it. I closed my eyes, and the air itself seemed to hum. I wasn't just hearing it. I was inside it. That's when I saw him, or thought I did. A shape beneath the water, not far from the base of the cliff. It moved with a strange, deliberate grace, glowing faintly blue under the waves. At first, I thought it was a trick of the moonlight, but when it lifted its head toward me, I saw two eyes open, not human but aware. The sound pulsed louder. The figure raised a hand, palm up, as if beckoning. My body leaned forward without thought. For a moment, I almost stepped off the edge. Then lightning flashed across the horizon, and the figure vanished. When I replayed the recording later, there was no thunder, no lightning, only the tone, growing louder and louder until it became almost unbearable. But just before the track cut off, a whisper buried deep in the noise. I slowed it down, filtered it, amplified it until my speakers crackled. It was a voice, a man's voice, deep and resonant, speaking in a language I couldn't understand, but one word repeated clearly, again and again, until it faded into static. Yah-nthley. I've heard that name in my dreams ever since. The dreams are vivid, too vivid. I'm underwater, but I can breathe. The light filters through the surface in pale ribbons. I float over an endless landscape of coral and stone, arranged in impossible geometry, spirals, arcs, towers rising from the seabed. The structures look built, not natural, and in the distance, that same figure waits, motionless, watching me. Each night I drift closer to him. Each night I wake up with more of the pattern burned into my skin, faint, phosphorescent when the lights go out. The locals have started avoiding me. At the market, conversations die when I enter. Yesterday, I caught two fishermen crossing themselves after I walked by. One of them muttered, "She's hearing the deep song." When I asked what that meant, the other said, "That's what took my brother." There are stories here, whispers about people who wandered too close to the cliffs, about divers who went missing near Devil's Throat. They say the sea takes them, but not like drowning. They just vanish, leaving their boats adrift and engines running. I've begun to understand why. Every time I close my eyes, the sound grows stronger. It's not just noise now. It's a melody, haunting, beautiful, almost human. It changes depending on the tide, shifting like it's alive. Sometimes I think I can hear words forming beneath it. Tonight, when I listened, the voice was clear. Not through the speakers in my head. It said my name. I froze, every muscle locking in place. Then, in the silence that followed, I heard another word, soft, patient, and filled with impossible sadness. "Come." I turned off the recorder, but the sound didn't stop. It vibrated through the floorboards, the glass my teeth. My hands were shaking, but I couldn't look away from the window. The ocean outside was glowing faintly, like something was moving just beneath the surface. For the first time, I realized what the signal was. It wasn't a message. It was a summons, and I don't know if I have the strength to resist it much longer. It's been 12 days since I first heard the voice clearly. I've stopped keeping track of hours. The sound never really stops anymore. It just hides beneath the noise of daily life, the hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock, the wind in the window frames. It's always there waiting. I've started hearing it even without the equipment. Sometimes in my dreams, sometimes while I'm awake. It doesn't frighten me anymore. It feels familiar, like a forgotten language my blood remembers how to speak. The last few nights, I've dreamed of being deep underwater again, but the dreams are no longer passive. The figure, Yah-nthley, doesn't just watch me now. He speaks. His mouth doesn't move, yet I hear him perfectly, the sound resonating not in my ears, but inside my chest. He tells me things, not in words, but in images, flashes of ancient structures, of cities made from living coral and obsidian, of creatures that drift through the currents with eyes like lanterns. He shows me spirals carved into stone, glowing beneath the sea, pulsing in rhythm with the song. And I understand them, though I've never seen such symbols before. Each time I wake, I draw what I remember. My walls are covered now with pages of sketches, symbols, diagrams, fragments of what looks like an underwater language. Some of them match the patterns in the sonar recordings. Others I've never seen anywhere. Yesterday, I realized one of the symbols matches an engraving on the base of the cliffs. I found it during low tide, a spiral carved into the rock, half covered by barnacles, glowing faintly when the moonlight hit it. I touched it. My fingers tingled, and the air seemed to thicken around me. For a moment, the sound stopped entirely, and I heard a heartbeat. Not mine. That night, the dream changed. I was standing on the ocean floor, surrounded by pillars of black coral. Cale was there, closer than before, his form clearer now, tall, with translucent skin that shimmered like scales beneath the dim light. His eyes were not human, yet they carried a strange sorrow. When he spoke, the water around us vibrated, forming ripples of light. "You hear us," he said. The voice echoed through me. "Yes," I answered, though I didn't remember speaking. "Why me?" "Because you remember. When I woke, my lungs burned, and my bed was wet, not sweat, but salt water. My hair smelled like the sea. Since then I felt strange. My breathing has slowed, my pulse softer, slower. My reflection looks different. My eyes seem darker around the edges, the pupils wider even in daylight. I thought it was exhaustion, but when I stood under the shower, I saw thin lines forming on my neck, faint as veins, but moving with each breath. I tried to tell myself it was just skin irritation, but deep down I knew it wasn't. Cale, that comes to me even when I'm awake now. I'll be working, writing, or eating, and suddenly everything goes quiet, as if the air itself pauses to listen. And then his voice, soft, gentle, terrifying. "Do you know what the surface people have forgotten?" he asks. "That the ocean remembers every name it has ever taken." He shows me images again, ships sinking, storms raging, bodies dissolving into the deep. But there's beauty in it, a strange peace. He tells me that below the waves there is no time, no fear, only memory. I asked him what Yah-nthley is. He didn't answer with words. Instead, I saw it, a vast city sleeping beneath the continental shelf, its towers breathing light, its gates guarded by shadows that move like thought. And above it, the moon, huge and red, mirrored perfectly on the still water. He said, "It calls. We remember the bloodline." I woke with my mouth full of salt, and the word remember echoing through my head. When I stepped outside this morning, the fog was waiting, dense, motionless, swallowing the trees and cliffs alike. The air buzzed faintly, like the low hum before a storm. I could hear whispers in it, not voices exactly, but fragments of language, the same cadence as the song. My equipment started recording on its own. When I checked the display, the signal had changed frequency again. The waveform now pulsed in perfect time with my heartbeat. I know what that means. It's not calling the world anymore. It's calling me. Cale speaks in sentences anymore. He teaches in visions, in waves of feeling that move through me like tides. Each time he comes, I feel less weight in my body, as if gravity no longer belongs to me. My thoughts drift in rhythms, drawn out like currents under the surface. He shows me the beginning, not of humanity, but of memory. In the dream, I am standing at the edge of a cliff older than the continents. The sea below is black, still and endless, The air smells of iron and salt. Then the sky splits open and something vast descends, not from the stars but from the deep. A pulse moves through the world, and from it rise shapes that shimmer and breathe, neither human nor beast. Kale that stands among them, eyes burning like drowned suns. He tells me that before men built their cities, before words were carved in stone, there was Yah-nthley, a place of thought and song, hidden in the folds of the ocean. It was never meant for the surface, never meant to be known. But blood remembers, and some of that blood, he says, walks the land still. When I ask what that means, the vision shifts. I see a woman, my mother, standing by the sea at night, her hair whipping in the wind. She's whispering to the waves, her hands trembling. Behind her, the tide rises higher and higher, yet she doesn't move. When she turns toward me, her eyes reflect the same blue glow I've seen in the water. You were never meant to forget, Kale says. The next day, I wake with sand under my nails and seaweed tangled in my hair. The sheets are wet again, but not from seawater this time. It smells sweet, metallic, faintly alive. I scrub my hands until they're raw, but I can still feel the texture of coral on my fingertips. I no longer record the signal. The machines distort it. I hear it perfectly now, directly, as if it vibrates inside my bones. Sometimes it hums low and calm, other times sharp and urgent. It reacts to my breathing, to my heartbeat, to my thoughts. Kale that speaks to me often. He calls me by a name I don't recognize, Elura. He says it softly, like a memory long forgotten, and every time I hear it, I feel a warmth in my chest, something like love. He shows me fragments of Yah-nthley, glowing spires rising from trenches, arches made of living bone, streets paved with shells that hum when touched. In one vision, I see figures swimming through the city, their bodies human and not, their faces serene as they drift through the light. They are not ghosts. They are not monsters. They are the remembered ones. I feel envy. When I ask him why he shows me all this, he says, "Because you must choose. The sea remembers, but it does not wait." I try to resist. I tell him I am human, that I belong to the world above. But my words sound false even to me. I can no longer stand the dryness of air, the silence of the land. Every sound feels muted compared to the song beneath the waves. My skin aches for the touch of water. Sometimes I forget how long I've been here. The days bleed together. The townspeople have stopped acknowledging me entirely. They avert their eyes when I pass. Children whisper when they see the marks on my neck. They've deepened now, faintly iridescent under certain light. Last night, I went down to the beach during low tide. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and the water was black as ink. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring into the surf. The longer I watched, the more I could see, faint lights below, pulsing in time with the rhythm inside my chest. Kale whispered then, so close it felt like his breath was in my ear. The surface forgets what it fears, he said, but fear was never meant for us. When I looked down, the sand around my feet had begun to move, swirling, forming the same spiral I saw carved into the cliffs. I didn't step back. I wanted to see what it would do. The water reached my ankles. It was warm, and for a moment, I thought I heard something vast sigh from beneath the waves. I'm no longer afraid of what's happening to me. I think maybe I'm only becoming what I was meant to be. The next full moon is in 3 days. The signal's amplitude is rising again, faster than ever before. Kale says that when the moon touches the water, Yah-nthley will sing once more, and the gates will open. When I asked what that meant for me, he didn't answer. He only smiled, and for the first time, I think I understood why the ocean has always sounded like a heartbeat. I haven't eaten in 4 days, but I don't feel hunger in the way I used to. Food tastes wrong now, too dry, too lifeless. The only thing that satisfies me is water. Cold, deep water. Sometimes I fill the bathtub and lie there for hours, until my skin turns pale and soft. I listen to the hum of the pipes and pretend it's the ocean calling through the walls. My body is changing faster. The marks on my neck have darkened, stretching down toward my collarbones like branching veins. My fingers stay pruned no matter how dry they are. My eyes sting in daylight. Sometimes I see movement in my peripheral vision, shadows slipping just beneath the floorboards, shapes that disappear when I turn my head. I know it's not madness. It's memory. Cale says that I'm shedding the noise of the surface, that I'm remembering the rhythm of the deep. I don't know if I believe him, but when I breathe underwater in my dreams, it feels right. Natural, like I was meant to all along. 2 nights ago, I woke up on the beach. I don't remember leaving the house. The moon was almost full, and the tide was high, licking at my feet. My clothes were soaked. My hair was full of sand. In my hand was a shell I'd never seen before, smooth, black, and perfectly round, humming faintly when I held it to my ear. The sound it made wasn't like any ocean sound I'd heard before. It was a heartbeat. Since then, I can't stop thinking about the deep. Every sound around me seems to echo its pulse. The refrigerator, the ceiling fan, even my own heartbeat, they all sync to that same rhythm. Sometimes, when I breathe, I can feel water moving behind my ribs. I tried recording the signal again, hoping to prove to myself that it's all real. But the moment I pressed record, the equipment began to fail, screens flickering, the speakers whining in low distortion. Then, through the static, a voice. Not Cale this time. A chorus. Dozens, maybe hundreds of voices whispering in unison. I could only make out one phrase before the power cut out completely. We are the tide. When the lights came back, the monitors showed something impossible. A live feed from the sonar display. Not the usual static pattern, but a shape. A figure rising from the deep trench, outlined in bioluminescent blue. It was massive. For a moment, it looked human. Then it opened its eyes. I unplugged everything and smashed the main terminal with a wrench. But when I looked at my reflection in the dark screen, I saw that my pupils were no longer round. They'd elongated, narrow and luminous like something that belonged in the ocean. It didn't frighten me. It felt like recognition. That night I walked through town. The streets were empty, but I could feel them watching from behind their curtains. The smell of salt hung in the air, heavy and sweet. When I reached the docks, the water was glowing faintly blue, the same color as my eyes. Cale spoke to me again, not from within, but through the waves. His voice was everywhere, surrounding me. "You feel it now," he said. "The hunger, the remembering." He told me that Yah-nthley isn't a place. It's a state of being, the merging of all that once lived with the deep. Every creature, every drop of blood that's touched the sea becomes part of its pulse. That's what the song is, the ocean remembering itself. And now it remembers me. I fell to my knees and dipped my hands into the water. It was warm again, almost alive. I could feel vibrations travel up my arms, through my chest, into my skull. For a second, I saw through the water's surface, not reflections, but images. A city of spirals, shapes moving through the light, faces I half recognized, smiling, waiting. I stayed like that until dawn. When I finally stood, my legs felt weak, unsteady. I could still feel the tide moving through me, as if I'd swallowed part of it. Back at the house, I found a note slipped under my door. No name, just 5 words, written in trembling ink. "The moon is almost here." I think they meant it as a warning. But I can't stop smiling when I read it, Because I already know. The moon isn't coming. It's returning. The letter came from my mother's old address, a house that hasn't existed for years. The envelope was damp, the ink blurred at the edges, but the handwriting was hers. I knew it instantly. Inside was a single sheet of paper, yellowed and fragile. There were only a few lines written, and though the words were faint, I could still read them. You will hear it too. Don't be afraid when it calls you by your true name. I tried to silence it, but the ocean never forgets its children. The rest of the page was covered in smudges, but beneath them, faint symbols, spirals, waves, crescents, the same shapes I've seen in my dreams. My hands trembled as I touched them. They felt warm. That night, Kaldats came to me more vividly than ever before. There was no distance between us this time. I stood before him on the ocean floor, my bare feet sinking into the soft sand. Around us, pillars of coral reached upward like cathedral spires, glowing faintly in the dark. He looked at me with something like sorrow. "You remember now," he said. I tried to speak, but the words came out as bubbles, rising and bursting above me. He placed a hand against my chest, and the bubbles stopped. I could breathe water. I could feel it flow through me, filling my lungs without pain. "You were born of both," he continued, "of land and tide. Your mother turned her back on us, but your blood never forgot. You are the bridge, Elura, the voice between worlds." Hearing that name again made something break open inside me. I remembered flashes, my mother singing to me as a child, her voice low and sad, humming a tune that matched the pulse of the ocean outside our window. Nights when she stood on the shore long after sunset, whispering to the waves in a language I couldn't understand. She used to tell me I was different, that I was meant to listen closely to the world. I thought she meant empathy. I never realized she meant this. When I woke, the sheets were soaked again, but this time I wasn't alone. Small, glistening scales clung to the fabric, silver blue, translucent. My skin shimmered faintly in the moonlight, the lines along my neck pulsing softly. My breathing had changed, slower, deeper, as if each inhale pulled not just air, but something older. I tried to hide it at first. I wore scarves, gloves, long sleeves, but people noticed. Mrs. Cohen stopped coming to collect rent. The fishermen stared openly when I passed. One of them, the same man who'd spoken to me at the diner weeks ago, left a dead fish on my doorstep with a note that said, "Go back where you came from." I wanted to laugh. If only he knew how true that was. I no longer need the recorder or the signal logs. I hear Kaldats constantly now, not as words but as presence. His voice weaves through my thoughts like currents between rocks. When I close my eyes, I can feel Yah-nthley beneath me, vast and patient, like a memory that never ends. The sea has been restless for days. The tides rise higher than they should. The sky feels heavier, darker, even during daylight. The air itself hums, low and constant. 2 nights ago, I returned to the cliff where it all began. The carved spiral glowed brighter than before, the marks pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. I pressed my hand to the stone, and it was warm. My reflection shimmered in the tide pools. My eyes glowed faintly blue, and for the first time I saw the truth. The woman staring back wasn't human anymore. Kaldats told me not to fear it. "The land will forget you," he said, "but the deep remembers." I think of my mother often now. I wonder if she heard the same song before she disappeared. Maybe she returned home long before I understood what that meant. Maybe she's still down there, among the towers of Yah-nthley waiting. Sometimes, when the fog rolls in, I hear 2 voices calling from the deep. One is Kaldats. The other sounds like hers. I don't know if I'll see the sunrise again, but I don't think I care. The air hurts to breathe. The world feels too dry, too small. The moon rises full tomorrow, and when it does, I will go to the water. Not to study it, not to listen, but to remember. The town has turned against me. It began with whispers, then stares, then silence. Now, when I walk through the streets, doors close and curtains snap shut. The air feels charged, heavy, as if the whole place is holding its breath. 3 nights ago, someone painted a mark on my front door, a crude spiral drawn in black tar. Beneath it, scrawled in shaky letters, "Drown her before she drowns U.S." I stood there for a long time, staring at it. I should have been afraid. Instead, I felt something close to pity. They don't understand what's coming. They think I'm the danger, but I'm only the echo. The sea is what they should fear. It's been patient too long. The signal hasn't stopped. I hear it everywhere now, not just in my mind, in the hum of the streetlights, in the flutter of seagull wings, in the murmur of waves beneath the dock. The whole town vibrates with it, even if they pretend not to hear. I try to speak to Mrs. Cohen one last time. I went to her porch, knocked softly. She opened the door, just enough for me to see her eyes, red-rimmed, frightened. "Go back to where you came from," she whispered. "The sea's taken enough of us already." Before I could answer, she slammed the door. I could hear her praying on the other side. That same night, I saw lights moving on the beach, lanterns, torches, a group of men gathered near the tide. They were dragging something heavy through the sand. I stayed hidden among the dunes and watched. When they reached the water's edge, they dropped it a body. At first, I thought it was human. Then I saw the gills, the translucent skin, the eyes that glowed faintly in the moonlight. One of the men struck it with an oar until it stopped moving. Another spat into the water. "Abominations," he said. "They're crawling back." I wanted to scream, to tell them that it wasn't an abomination, that it was returning home. But I stayed silent. The tide came in, and the waves carried the body away. The next morning, the beach was empty, but the smell of salt and blood lingered in the air. I think Cale's felt it too. His voice that night was sharp, distant, filled with something like grief. "They kill what they fear," he said. "They fear what they've forgotten." I told him I wanted to come home. He didn't answer right away. Then softly, "Soon, when the moon opens the path." Since then, I can feel the sea closer every hour. The tides reach further inland. The fog never lifts anymore. The entire town smells like brine. Yesterday, I caught my reflection in the window and barely recognized myself. The marks on my neck have opened, not bleeding, but breathing. Tiny gill slits, drawing air that feels too dry. My skin has taken on a faint sheen, iridescent under lamplight. My hair clings damp to my back, even when I haven't touched water in days. The hunger is constant now. I dream of sinking, of pressure, of silence so deep it becomes warmth. The land feels foreign, a brittle shell I'm trapped inside. But the people know something is coming. They can feel it too. The wind hums with the song. The ocean glows faintly blue at night, and sometimes, from the cliffs, I see shapes moving just beneath the surface. More of them, like me, waiting. Tonight, I heard voices outside, footsteps, hushed whispers. I peeked through the curtains and saw 3 men standing by my door, holding ropes and lanterns. One had a harpoon. I didn't wait. I slipped out the back and ran toward the cliffs. The fog was so thick I could barely see, but the song guided me, soft and clear. Behind me, I could hear them shouting, but the wind drowned them out. When I reached the edge, I looked down. The sea below was glowing like liquid glass, alive with movement. Cale, that was there, not in a vision, but real, standing in the shallows, his arms open. I could feel the pull in my blood, the call. For a moment, I hesitated. The air behind me was full of noise, footsteps, shouts, fear. The world I'd known begging me to stay. But the world ahead was silent, endless and waiting. I took one step forward, and the sea rose to meet me. The fall was not what I expected. There was no shock, no pain, no rush of air or crashing water. Only warmth, a slow, enveloping warmth that swallowed sound and thought alike. For a moment, I couldn't tell if I was drowning or breathing, only that every inch of me pulsed in rhythm with the tide. When I opened my eyes, I was surrounded by blue. Not the blue of the surface. This was darker, alive, threaded with ribbons of silver light. The water shimmered with movement, and everywhere I looked, shapes drifted like fragments of memory, pale hands, slow eyes, voices without mouths. Kaldats was there, waiting. He looked different now, less human, more vast. His skin glowed faintly, like moonlight caught beneath the surface. When he reached for me, the water around his fingers rippled as though the sea itself responded to his touch. "Welcome home," he said. His voice didn't echo this time. It vibrated through me, through the water, through everything. And suddenly I understood it wasn't speech. It was resonance. The same hum I'd been chasing for months wasn't a sound at all. It was language, the language of the deep. I tried to speak, but words felt clumsy here. My lungs filled easily, my body weightless. The marks on my neck fluttered softly with each breath. When I looked down, I saw that my skin had taken on the faint sheen of the others, scales so fine they were barely visible, glinting when the light touched them. Around us, the ocean stirred. Shadows moved between the ruins. Towers of black coral, arches of bone, carvings older than any human memory. Yah-nthley. I could feel its presence like a heartbeat, a low vibration that carried through the seafloor and into my bones. Kaldats led me through the ruins. As we passed, other figures emerged, not ghosts, not spirits, but the remembered ones. They watched me with eyes like polished stones, neither judging nor welcoming, only acknowledging. One reached out, touching my arm. Her skin was cool, soft, her face almost familiar. When she smiled, I knew why. It was my mother. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The current between us carried everything: love, sorrow, surrender. I reached for her, and when our hands touched, I saw her memories as if they were my own. Her leaving, her fear, her final descent, her transformation. She hadn't abandoned me. She'd returned home long before I could understand. I began to cry, but even my tears dissolved into the current, becoming part of it. Kaldats watched silently, his eyes bright. "Now you see," he said. "There is no death here, only remembering." I looked around at the endless expanse of Yah-nthley, towers spiraling upward into the blackness, bioluminescent tendrils flowing between them like veins. The city pulsed. It lived, and in its rhythm, I could hear the faint echo of every voice that had ever been lost to the sea. I felt them inside me, the drowned, the forgotten, the dreamers who had heard the call but never understood it. They weren't gone. They were here, part of the great memory, woven into the current. The surface world felt like a distant dream. I could still picture the cliffs, the house, the narrow streets of Dyer's Cove, but they seemed small now, fragile. I wondered if the people above could feel it, the shifting tide, the pressure building beneath their feet. "The moon will rise soon," Kaldats said, "and when it does, the world above will hear our song." I realized then that this wasn't an ending. It was a cycle. The surface would forget, as it always did, but the sea would remember. And sometimes, when the stars aligned and the moon turned red, it would call again. Someone would listen. Someone always did. I floated upward, weightless, the city glowing beneath me. When I broke through the surface, the moon hung enormous and crimson above the water, its reflection trembling across the waves. The air felt strange, too thin, too still. I could see the cliffs far away, dotted with lights. People had gathered there, staring out at the ocean. I could almost hear their voices, prayers, shouts, confusion. The tide surged higher, spilling over the rocks, swallowing the shore. The hum filled the air, rising from the deep, growing louder until it became a song. The song of Yah-nthley. It wasn't a melody of words or notes. It was emotion made sound, grief and beauty interwoven. The ocean glowed beneath the moonlight, and for a moment I felt infinite. Yah-nthley rose beside me, the water flowing over his shoulders like silk. His eyes met mine. "The surface forgets," he said again. "But we don't." And with that, we sank back beneath the waves, our song echoing through the currents, carried across the world. Somewhere above, the lights of the town began to flicker and die, one by one. Time doesn't move here. Not the way it does above. Down here, everything breathes in rhythm. Inhale, exhale, tide and pulse, all one continuous motion. I don't count the days anymore. I don't dream, because I no longer sleep. The ocean remembers for me. Sometimes I rise close enough to the surface to see the light filtering down, ribbons of gold trembling through the blue. The water above glows faintly with the reflection of the moon, and I can almost see the land beyond. It feels distant, fragile, like a photograph left too long in the sun. The people of Dyer's Cove have stopped coming near the cliffs. They say the tides are unpredictable now, the fog too thick, the air too heavy. They speak of lights beneath the waves and voices carried on the wind. Some claim to hear the hum in their walls, the same low rhythm that once found me. I listen to them sometimes. Their fear is soft, almost tender. They whisper prayers to their gods and light candles for the dead, but the sea is older than all their names. It does not want their worship, only their memory. That says I am still between worlds, that my voice carries where others can't. When I hum, the current shifts. When I whisper, the surface ripples. The ocean listens, and somewhere the shore listens too. I've seen others join us, some willingly, drawn by dreams and longing. Others stumble into the deep by accident, pulled by tides they cannot fight. Each one awakens slowly, blinking through the darkness, remembering who they were before the land claimed them. And when they finally open their eyes, the first thing they see is Yah-nthley, eternal, patient, alive. The city grows. Every voice that joins becomes part of a song. Every thought, every heartbeat adds to the current. We don't lose ourselves here, we expand. We become the tide. Above, the world keeps forgetting. But every generation, someone remembers. It begins the same way, a sound beneath the silence, a rhythm that doesn't belong. Curiosity, obsession, surrender. The pattern repeats, and the song finds a new voice. Tonight, the moon is full again. I can feel its pull through the water, its red light seeping into every wave. The hum deepens, spreading through the trenches, through Yah-nthley, through all of us. The ocean shivers with anticipation. I rise slowly, breaking the surface just enough to see the cliffs. They look smaller than I remember. The wind is cold on my skin, but it doesn't hurt. I can see the lights of the houses flickering, and for a moment, I wonder if someone is awake, someone sitting by a window, listening, hearing the faint echo beneath the wind. I hope they do. I hope the sound finds them the way it found me, because it's not a curse. It's an invitation. The ocean is vast, yes, but it's not empty. It's full of memory, full of voices, full of all the lives the world forgot. And it's always listening. When the moon rises red and the fog begins to breathe, it will call again. Maybe not tonight, maybe not for years, but one day someone will hear it. A woman alone by the shore, a sailor on a silent sea, a child waking to the hum in the walls. And when they do, they'll feel it too, that pulse in their blood, that whisper in their bones. They'll follow it the way I did, and when they finally reach the water, I'll be there. We all will, waiting,